Needless to say, Mr. Prime Minister, you can see how excited the boys, the girls are, the school, standing room only, some parents who came to join us as well. I'm really just going to have a very brief introduction. The Prime Minister that doesn't do his bio justice on any level, because we want to get straight to the Prime Minister and be able to hear from him, and we're very excited for that. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett was born in Haifa, March 25th, 1972, the third and youngest brother in his family. His parents made Aliyah to Israel in 1967, immediately after the Six-Day War. Over the next few years, the family moved here to Canada, then back to the US, before settling in Israel. Prime Minister Bennett was drafted into the IDF Special Forces, Sayeret Matkal, many of you have heard about that unit, in 1980, and moved up in ranks throughout his time there. In 1999, he went into private practice, private business, and founded a company that sold for a significant sum of money. And even while he was working in that company, he took a hiatus in 2002 during Operation Defensive Shield to go back to Israel to join the fighting. Between 2006 and 2008, Prime Minister Bennett served as Bibi Netanyahu's chief of staff and ran his campaign for Likud primary election. And in 2013, the elections for the 19th Knesset, his party, the Jewish Home, under his leadership, won 12 seats, a huge success. And in that year, he started to serve in a number of minister posts and portfolios. Fast forward to 2019, Prime Minister Bennett is the youngest serving ever Minister of Defense. And then in 2021, of course, he becomes the 13th Prime Minister of the State of Israel, something that is incredibly proud, and that we're incredibly proud, and a real privilege to be able to host the Prime Minister. And as a part of our program this morning, the Prime Minister is going to be interviewed by our very own Lir Yissar. Lir Yissar is a rising senior at the Bnei Akiva schools. She has been an ongoing mentor at Allied Voices for Israel, achieving the Rising Star Award during her time there. Lir is an esteemed Solomon Fellow on the Likud Fund. She's been a strong member of our school's Model UN team, which she captained this past year. And she is, of course, passionate about Israel and has prepared many wonderful questions for the Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, Bakasha.
Not be more excited than being with you, this remarkable group of boys and girls that love Israel, belong to Bnei Akiva. I myself was a chanich and madrich in Bnei Akiva, so sang the same songs. My daughter Michal is a madricha in Bnei Akiva. She's 16 years old, and I think Bnei Akiva was really central in the values that I grew up with, and I take to this very day. Eretz Yisrael, Am Yisrael, and Torat Yisrael. And it's really that combination that provides me the strength needed throughout all the years to do the stuff I've been doing. And as Prime Minister of Israel, I want you to know, first of all, we certainly want every one of you to come to Israel and make Aliyah, okay? But I also recognize that not everyone will, and regardless, as Prime Minister of Israel, I always felt that I have a unique obligation to every Jew in the world. And that's very special, because Israel is not only the nation or the country of its inhabitants, it's also the country that belongs to every Jew in the world, regardless where that Jew decides to live. And we always have a connection. We always care for you, and I know that you care for us. And whenever there's a war in Israel, I know that you're out there supporting us and fighting for us. Whenever, Khalila, there's anti-Semitism.
And on that path that got you there, given your really amazing and diverse background in high tech and the Army.
This is a hardball question. I hadn't planned to enter politics. I had served quite a few years as a soldier and commander in couple of elite units in the Israeli military, and then entered high-tech, which I really loved, and founded a company and failed, and continued failing and failing until ultimately we did succeed. And after I sold my company for a big number, so, you know, you imagine you'll be in Acapulco with a cocktail and one of those little umbrellas. The Second Lebanon War started, and I was called in to command troops in where our goal was to locate rocket launchers and destroy them. That was my expertise, to locate rocket launchers. I'm really good at it. If you ever need rocket launching services at home, let me know. Come and clear it up. So now it was different, because as a younger man, when I was 18, you serve in the military, but here I was already 34, I believe, and with my first boy, Yoni, and my wife was pregnant. It was different, but what really happened was I was very disappointed with Israel's leadership back then. I felt that mistakes that the politicians were making were causing tremendous suffering to people, to innocent people who did no harm. And I was so frustrated, I said, I have to be there. I don't want people to suffer anymore because of mistakes in leadership. So I left high-tech and entered politics, which is, it's a difficult environment, but you know, you can make such a big difference, and God bless, I had the opportunity to lead the state of Israel and do a lot of good in many ways. So, Toda Kadosh Baruch Hu.
So after getting the chance to get more involved in politics, and you spoke about the mistakes you're reviewing that other people made, would you be able to please share a reflection with us on one mistake you believe you made as a politician and one of your proudest accomplishments as Prime Minister?
Yeah, I made a bunch of mistakes throughout the years as a politician. I would say, as Prime Minister, I didn't invest enough time in politics. When you're a politician, you, in my opinion, you have two objectives, basically. One is to accumulate political power, and the other is to use the power to do good for Am Yisrael, right? If you don't have power, but you love Am Yisrael, you can be many other things, but you're not going to be a political leader. And if you only seek to accumulate power, but you're not doing it for the good of Am Yisrael, then you're just corrupt. Okay, so you need to accumulate power and use the power to do good. And as Prime Minister, my big mistake, I underinvested in politics, and I was so focused on getting stuff done, but I think in retrospect, neglected investing and cultivating the members of Knesset and egos and all that stuff, which is very important, because ultimately, if you don't do it, the government doesn't continue long enough. So I would say that. In terms of things I'm proud of, I would say a couple of things. Well, the first is I shifted strategy with Iran and went on the offensive. So for the first time, we began hitting Iran in Iran, not related to the nuclear aspect. So when they messed around with us on our borders with Hezbollah or Hamas, for the first time they were paying huge prices. According to foreign sources, folks were being killed in Tehran, you know, terror commanders assassinated in Tehran, again, according to foreign sources. But my point is that my message to Iran was, you can't mess around and hit Israelis on our borders and get away with it. If you try and hurt Israelis, we're going to come and hunt you down in the heart of Iran. So that's one thing that made a major dent. The second thing that I'm proud of is that I evolved also, and demonstrate to myself and to the people that Israelis on both sides of the aisle can work together. Left and right, secular and religious, Jews and Arabs, as long as we agree on the basics of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. This, for me, was a big lesson, because I had not planned to run this sort of government, which was really diverse and 8 different parties. Imagine that. It's quite a juggling act. So I'm very proud that we demonstrated how people that disagree can work together on the parts that they agree upon, which is most. Most of the issues we agree upon. We all agree we need a better economy, lower cost of homes, less crime, better education, better public transportation. And we disagree. We have some disagreements on the Palestinian issue, on religion and state. So my government basically put that 30% of disagreements aside and said, we'll freeze that. We're not going to decide one way or another. Now let's focus on the parts we agree upon. And it worked. It was an incredibly effective government that got stuff done.
Thank you so much. On the topic of the government that you created what some might argue was a dream government in Israel on the topic of diversity. Do you think that this kind of government is an attainable goal for Israel and you were simply ahead of your time, or is it something that cannot be reached and only dreamt about?
That's a beautiful question, and I'll answer very clearly. Not only do I think it could happen again, I think it has to happen again. The only way forward for Medinat Israel is to work together on both sides of the aisle. Now, this is not something I would have said 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's something I realize now. The only thing that is risking Israel's future is the internal bickering and fighting. And it's really, I have to admit, it's bad. It's bad. It takes out, a lot of hate and negativity. And from my perspective, the governments we need for the next decade or two are unity governments with the major parties all inside. We have to work together. And Am Yisrael is an amazing people, but we also have to be honest with ourselves and see that something that plagued us for eternity has been milchamot achim, fights from within. During the first temple and second temple, let me tell you something I'm not sure you realize. Medinat Israel, the current state of Israel, it's the 3rd time we have a state, an independent Jewish state in Eretz Israel. It's not the first time, it's the 3rd time. What was the first one? Raise of hands. What was the first Medinat Israel independent? Yeah? Excuse me? That's correct. First Bet Mikdash, first temple. Who was the first leader of joint Israel? Yeah?
King David.
That's correct. King David. David HaMelech was the first leader. This was about 3,000 years ago. Because until then we were tribes, and he combined all of the 12 tribes to be again one united kingdom. Now, the 3rd question, how long did we manage to keep united? Be'erech, ballpark. Yeah? How many? 2 generations. That's exactly right. What's your name? Ezra. So, correct. About 80 years. Yeah, Ezra's good. We managed about 80 years. So, Melech David, who was his son? Shlomo. So, under Shlomo, we were still united. And who was his son? That's good. Correct. Rechavam. Rechavam messed it up. I'm not going to get into all of it, but essentially we then divided, after 80 years, even a bit less than 80 years, we divided into 2 kingdoms. One is called Yehuda and the other is called Israel. What happened to Mamlechet Israel later on? Exile and disappeared, evaporated. So 10 tribes that belong to Israel are gone. all of us are descendants only of Yehuda. That's why we're called Yehudim, Jews, Judea Jews. That's okay. We're called Jews because we're descendants only of Yehuda. So, bottom line, we had a state in Israel with roads and education and taxes and everything, an army, and after less than 80 years, we blew it. Fast forward 1,000 years, we had a second independent state. Who led it? Come on. No, well, Ezra and Nehemiah, it wasn't yet a state. The Jews came back to Israel, but they were still under the Persians. So, but I'm talking about founding an independent state, yeah. Hashmonaim, correct. Hashmonaim, is that Ezra again? Eitan? Eitan, good. All right, it's tight. Ezra and Eitan. But Eitan is right. The Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, Yehuda Maccabi, all of them, they founded an independent state in Israel. Again, with an army, with roads, with schools, ministries, etc., etc. How long did that continue until we blew it? Be'erich? This one's tough. All right, come on. Ezra. Not bad. Ezra says 100 less, it was 75, but that was close. I'll give you half a point of that. All right, so it went up for 75 years, and then two brothers fought and divided, and guess what they did? Pardon my criticism of our forefathers, but they went to the Romans and said, come in, and because we're fighting, you come in and solve our fight, and that's what we did. So we had a country for 75 years. The Jews have never in history passed the 8th decade as an independent sovereign state in Israel, and now we're 75 years old. And this time, we have to do it. We have to make it forever. We're not going to get a fourth chance, right? And I'm saying this because it's serious stuff. This is the main thing to keep Israel going is Achdut Yisrael. Doesn't mean we have to agree. It means we have to agree on how we disagree, how we work together when we don't agree. And that's why I say this is the #1 challenge for Medinat Israel. And Ezra and Eitan.
About me.
Did you answer anything? What? King David, that's okay. What's your name? The guy with King David? Ben, okay. All right. Well, one of the things I did in my reserve service, I did the screening process for Sayeret Matkal, where boys wanted to, so it's a lot of physical, so if we can work it out here, we'll go out. We'll see who comes in first. And I just want to note, and I'm not saying this is criticism, but I didn't hear enough from the girls yet. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to ask my next question on behalf of all the girls.
She's good.
So given your religious background and beliefs, what are your opinions on religion in the state of Israel and rabbis that lead political parties?
Great question. Queen Lir. So, I'll tell you, Israel is a Jewish state. I'm a man of faith. But I also believe that the worst thing you can do in Judaism is coerce, is try and force something. It doesn't work, it's counterproductive, and it's not the Jewish way. And therefore, when there's religious legislation, by and large, I hate it. And I'll give you an example. who's been in Israel on Yom Kippur ever? Okay. Isn't it amazing on Yom Kippur? Like, Israel shuts down, not one car, there's a lot of bicycles, granted, but, and it's the only country on earth that you can just walk on the highways. It's this fun thing. It's what you do after shul, after Kol Nidrei, Ma'ariv. You go out on the main roads of your city, whether it's Haifa or Ra'anana or Tel Aviv, and it's this amazing experience. It gets me goosebumps. Now, in Israel, there's no law that prevents driving on Yom Kippur. You can drive, it's legal, but no one does, because there's no law. If tomorrow there were some smart aleck religious member of Knesset that legislates a law preventing driving on Yom Kippur, what would happen on the following Yom Kippur? Yeah, you get loads of cars. And that's precisely the issue. And that's what's going on in Israel. There's, in my opinion, very foolish, coercive laws. We don't need it. Israel doesn't need it. We're safe. Judaism in Israel, there's no mixed marriage in Israel because everyone's Jewish. So we don't have, the challenges are very different. We don't, I think the more you bring politics into religion, the more it ruins religion. And I think this period could be the golden age of Judaism in Israel because we're not threatened, because we can thrive, because we can develop ourselves. And you know, Judaism has, since most of our history, we've not had a sovereign state. So the Judaism and Halakha have developed through more on communities in the Golan around the world. So we have to develop what it means to be a Jewish state, and it's a process. Or in Canada, it's a process, and it's going to take some time. But by and large, I'm not very favorable of bringing politics into religion.
Thank you. After getting to hear your insightful and enlightening thoughts about politics, I think something that is on all of our minds are, do you see yourself getting back involved in politics?
Well, when I finished, I spent 12 years in politics, and it was a huge zchut. But to be fair, it was always also fairly difficult, especially the last year or two for my family. I've got 4 kids. All of them are now, from 18 to 11. And my wife said, now you take a long, long time off. But what we didn't realize is how quickly Israel would turn to what I think everyone agrees is not a great direction, and things are not so good right now domestically in Israel. So my wife's veto is eroding. So we'll see. Look, at the end of the day, I'm passionate about Am Yisrael. That's what I care about. That's what matters. I think, while every person, every one of you is going to choose your own way of life, I think life is more than about just making money or surviving. It's about a meaning, and we have a meaning. We have a mission. And it's all in our faith. So at the end of the day, that's what I care about, my family and my mom.
That's really beautiful.
I'm getting good grades from Lir.
You should consider yourself lucky. You may have kind of alluded to this in your last answer, but what is the biggest...
When you make Aliyah, you've got a place reserved in my heart.
What is the biggest issue facing Israelis today, and what should our political focus be?
The biggest issue by far is staying together. Mamash kacha. It's the one thing that keeps me up at night is this internal fighting that sometimes brings out the worst of us. And I think people have various dimensions. They have good traits, they have sometimes less good traits, and the challenge in life is to bring out the best of us. And right now, when I see what's going on in Israel, I feel that there are some politicians that want to sort of get us to fight each other because then it creates sort of a political base and heat and polarizes and gets people more emotional and angry. That's not good. We have to work together to figure out how we move forward. And it's the good news is that Israelis are beginning to understand that this direction of just fighting all day is not very productive. So more and more Israelis are understanding that. I'm a right of center on my political opinions. I'm Eretz Israel, Yadut, all of those elements. But the main issue today, it's not about Eretz Israel. There's no real big fight about Eretz Israel nowadays. It's about being able to work through and work together with people who view things otherwise. So by far the way forward, the only way forward I think we have is to be together, to build unity governments, which means right and left together in the same government, even if it means that each side doesn't get everything they want, and compromise. I've become a moderate in that sense. I'm a radical moderate. I think that's what we need. We need more and more compromise, more and more figuring out how we can work together, as opposed to getting everything you believe in right now. Lat, we've got time.
Thank you. So on the topic of issues, do you think there needs to be some kind of change in the Supreme Court system in Israel?
Yes, I do. I think what happened over the past 30 years is that Israel became much too, the legal system in Israel got too much sway and power over day-to-day life. I'll give you an example in business. Anyone knows that if you bring a case to court in business, it'll be years until it gets resolved. And people then just misuse the judicial system for those reasons. So I think we need to balance it. The question is how, and the wrong way to do it is to say, we won the election, so we're going to shove this down your throats, we're going to teach you a lesson, we're going to trample you. That's not how you do it. So we need to balance things. I think over the past decade, I together with some of my friends, for example, Minister Ayelet Shaked, who was Justice Minister, did a wonderful job in rebalancing things, but on a gradual basis, not revolution, one step after another. I think sometimes you shouldn't look for shortcuts. Sometimes it takes time to fix things, and when you try and do things too quickly, it created this big protest.
So given the current state and these protests, what are your predictions about the future of Israel?
I'm very optimistic about Israel. I'll tell you why. We're short term, it's going to be very bumpy, but mid-term and long-term, it's going to be amazing. And I'll tell you why. Israel is the only country, the only Western country in the world that has positive demographic growth. In Israel, a mom has 3.1 children on average. In the rest of the Western world, it's much lower, like 1.3, 1.4. It means Israelis are optimistic, and I'm not talking only about the Haredim, I'm talking about secular, modern Orthodox. By the way, Jews have more kids in Israel than Arabs. People don't know that. It's 3.1 versus 2.9. But the second reason is when I look at the younger generation in Israel, it's amazing. And I'm not saying this as a cliche. It's amazing. I think a lot has to do with Tzahal, with the IDF, where what happens in Tzahal at a very young age, suddenly you're assigned with huge responsibility, which is crazy. Give you a couple of examples. I myself, when I was 22 years old, 21, 22 years old, I was commanding about 80 soldiers in Lebanon, deep behind Hezbollah lines, commanding operations that I have to get the job done, bring my soldiers back securely, coordinate with artillery, Air Force, and all that. And I'm 21 or 22 years old. A young officer, she might be responsible for taking in all this information and deciding whether there's a credible threat of war, and does she need to trigger an alarm, or it can be commanding troops at, again, the age of 20. So by the time you're 21 or 22 years old, you think you're Superman. And so you have all these young people in Israel who have expanded their abilities at a very, very young age for a beautiful cause, which is the future of the state of Israel. And that's exactly what we need now in the world, right? Because, you know, you've got AI that's going to think for you. What you need at the end of the day, you've got all this technology and stuff. What you need is people who can initiate, can take responsibility, can work in teams, can be creative, can be bold. And I've been around the world a lot, and sometimes, I'll tell you something, sometimes kids, and I see it on campuses, I saw it in America, for example, are so cocooned or protected by their parents that they don't face the problems themselves. And then suddenly, when the world out there is tough. I'll give you an example. The issue of offensive language, all right? I see that everyone's offended, you know, they misuse something, I'm deeply offended. Come on. Come on, man. You're offended because someone misspoke. I think we should all be nice people, etc. But the world is tough. The world is tough out there, and you gotta face the world. You gotta be tough. You gotta face the friction of the world. And I think we would do ourselves well if and you don't be overly offended. Don't be overly protective. Go out there, fight, make mistakes, fail, get up again, fight again, do meaningful stuff. Don't be afraid. And when I look at Israeli kids, they're tough. They don't get offended easily. You know, when you've got bullets shooting at you, so you tend to be less sensitive about words. And so when I look at it, I think Am Yisrael, the state of Israel, I'm very optimistic. And I think one last point, perhaps, that'll connect. How do we keep our relationship going, like Israel and the Jews? It used to be mostly about the Shoah, all right? The state of Israel was founded 3 years after the end of the Shoah, and because of the Shoah, there was no need to explain anything. We need a state to defend the Jews. That's still the case. Still, the Jewish state is the place that everyone knows that Jews will be secure. But can that be in itself the whole purpose of the Jewish state? That's it? We're a shelter? Is that what Medinat Israel is about? I think that's not enough. We're more. Am Yisrael has a Yehud, has a destiny. And what is our destiny? Well, it's all here in the Torah. We know what our destiny is. It's to be Ol HaGoyim, to bring humanity solutions through the set of the Jewish values. Let me give you an example to bring it down to earth. I'm not only talking about developing medical stents in Israel and irrigation systems and water systems and technology. Got that. But I'll give you another example. Look at this. This is one of the world's biggest problems, this, right? Because we're all always engaged in this, right? And we lose touch and we know how toxic social media is, etc. So turns out there's an Israeli startup, a Jewish startup, that's out to solve this problem that we get addicted to our phones. It's called Shabbat. And here's how it works. Every Friday afternoon, this startup goes, you take all your electric devices and you turn them off for 25 hours until Motzei Shabbat. And then you do this thing called Kiddush and Erev Shabbat with your family. And there's this novel concept that you all sit around the table and you talk to each other. You actually look at each other, you ask, how was your week, what's going on, and you go to the shul together, and then you spend the day playing, I don't know, Katan? We play Katan. Who does Katan? Or whatever. But now seriously, think about it. This startup, but this is, I'm actually quite serious about it. Think about it. It's the perfect solution to the world. One of the world's biggest problems is addiction to all of this. So I think Yahadut, I think we ought to be solving problems for the world, but in the basis of our Jewish values. And so there's so much that we can do together, and that's why I'm so optimistic. So, Toda Rabba.
We have 2 final questions. We're going to ask Lir to
By the way,
say 2 final questions.
We all are shareholders in Shabbat, so it's a good stock to hold.
Prior to our 2 final questions, though, I really want to give a very special thank you. And that is to my close friend, my good friend Michael Levitt, and the entire Simon Wiesenthal Center.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael, in the back. When I spoke to Michael about the Prime Minister's visit, and I suggested the idea of bringing the Prime Minister to our school to meet with our students, first of all, right away, Michael said, what an incredible idea, what an amazing idea. But more than that, the Prime Minister jumped at the opportunity and said, if I'm in Toronto and I have the opportunity to teach those students who are in high school and those students who care about Israel and are passionate about the future of Medinat Yisrael, how could I turn it down? And we thank Michael, we thank the Simon Wiesenthal Center, we of course thank the Prime Minister. We're going to have one more question, but then what I'm going to ask is the following. Everyone's going to have to stay seated once the Prime Minister finishes, while the Prime Minister and his security detail exit the back of the shul, and then afterwards we'll dismiss you slowly and quietly, one group at a time. Okay, Lir, last question.
So I think that we can all get really amazing, countless messages from everything you've shared with us today. But if you had to leave us with one final thing, what would you say our role in all of this is as young Jewish Zionists?
So I really think the one takeaway is to stand up for Israel. Wherever you are, whenever, to always stand up for Israel and always be proud to be a Jew and to love Medinat Israel.
Thank you so much.
We're going to do Tfilah L'Shalom Medina once we get a Siddur. I think it'll have extra on the wall.
It's not in there. It's not in there. Get a cord.
Danielle? Do you want to switch? Do you want to switch?
Yeah, we're getting a close-up.
Okay, picture of
Probably
them,
stand
and
up.
then we clear.
אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו, ברך את מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו. הגן עליה בעזרת חסדך ופרוס עליה סוכת שלומך, ושלח אורך ועמיתך לראשיה, שריה ויועציה, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך. חזק את ידי מגיני ארץ קודשנו, והנחילם אלוהינו ישועה ועטרת ניצחון תאתרם, ונתת שלום בארץ ושמחת עולם ליושביה. ותחנו כל בית ישראל, עתיו, קודנה בכל ארצות פזוריהם, ותוליכם מהרה קוממיות לציון עירך, ולירושלים משכן שמך, ככתוב בתורת משה עבדך. אם יהיה נידחך בקצה השמיים, משם יקבצך אדוני אלוהיך ומשם ייקחך. והביאך אדוני אלוהיך אל הארץ אשר ירשו אבותיך וירשתה, והיטיבך והרבך מאבותיך. ומל אדוני אלוהיך את לבבך ואת לבב זרעך לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך למען חייך. ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולשמור את כל דברי תורתך, ושלח לנו מהרה בן דוד משיח צדקך, לבדוק מחכי קץ ישועתך. והופע באדר גאון עוזך על כל יושבי תבל ארצך. ויאמר כל אשר נשמה באפו, אדוני אלוהי ישראל מלך ומלכותו בכל משלה, אמן סלע. תודה רבה.
All our student council presidents come up for a quick picture, or incoming student council president. Last night was graduation.
Ladies and gentlemen, please sit down.
Bela, come on up. Come on up.